Hi, my name is Sarah, and I'm 26 years old. I became an orphan at a young age when my parents tragically died in a car accident. With no extended family to care for me, I was placed in an orphanage, where I spent 3 years before being adopted. My adoptive parents turned out to be billionaires, completely transforming my life. They gave me a loving, fulfilling childhood, but they preferred to keep my adoption private. They believed in doing good quietly without seeking attention. When I turned 18 and moved into my own place, my adoptive parents focused on expanding their business. They traveled to Europe in search of new opportunities. Around that time I met Mark, my now ex-husband. We met in college and we clicked almost instantly. Mark was cheerful and caring, and as we went on dates, our bond deepened. Eventually we became an official couple. Everything seemed perfect except for one significant issue. Mark's family didn't like me. We had already been together for 4 years when Mark suggested introducing me to his parents. We had both graduated, found stable jobs, and were engaged. Still, he warned me that his parents were judgmental about who their children dated. I was nervous, especially since they didn't know about me or our engagement. The night before meeting them, I confessed to Mark, "They're going to hate me." "They won't," he reassured me. "Do you really think they won't judge me even more when they find out we're engaged?" I asked skeptically. "Even if they do, it won't matter. Their opinions don't affect how I feel about you," he said firmly. I wasn't entirely convinced, so I suggested we keep our engagement a secret for the time being. Mark agreed, and I was determined to win them over. Mark's family was wealthy and valued luxury. They expected their children to date people of equal or greater status. At the time, my life didn't meet their expectations. I hadn't shared much about my adoptive parents because I wanted to be judged for who I was, not for my background. We arranged to meet his parents at an upscale restaurant. Mark held my hand tightly as we walked in. I had tucked my engagement ring into a necklace to keep it discreet. Unfortunately, things started off badly. We arrived just 2 minutes late, but Mark had warned me that his parents hated tardiness. They greeted us with icy expressions, glanced at me briefly, and then continued chatting with Mark as if I weren't there. Their blatant indifference made me feel small. Finally, Mark spoke up. "Mom, Dad, this is Sarah, my wonderful girlfriend." I mustered my courage, smiled, and said politely, "Hello, it's a pleasure to meet you both." His mother barely acknowledged me. "Hi," she replied coldly before continuing in a sharp tone. "So, Sarah, I hear you and Mark met in college. Is that right?" "Yes, we did," I answered. "We had some classes together." "And how did you manage to attend such a prestigious school?" his father cut in. "The tuition is quite high and admissions are competitive." "Dad, that's enough," Mark said firmly. "You will not speak to your father that way," his mother snapped. "It's a valid question. Sarah, please answer." Trying to remain composed, I replied, "I was fortunate enough to receive a full scholarship. I'm incredibly grateful, not just for the education but also for meeting Mark. It's been one of the best things to happen to me." His mother scoffed. "Of course it is. Mark is loaded and you clearly need that kind of money. At least you have some brains because your looks aren't exactly impressive." "That's enough," Mark said, his voice rising. "We're leaving." "Come on, Sarah." I was stunned. Their judgment had nothing to do with my character and everything to do with their shallow view of status. The car ride home was silent. Mark's grip tightened on the steering wheel, his anger clear. When we got home, he checked on me. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. But I wasn't. I had dressed carefully, behaved politely, and avoided ordering anything expensive. Still, Abigail and Charles, his parents, had judged me without giving me a chance. After that dinner, Mark didn't speak to his parents for weeks. When they finally reached out, it was only to accuse us of being disrespectful for walking out. Mark ignored them until a month later when he informed them of our engagement. They were livid. His parents offered to pay for our wedding, but only if they controlled every detail. Neither of us wanted that, so we eloped instead. My adoptive parents, still in Europe, supported our decision wholeheartedly. They even sent us a gift, an expensive painting. Not long after, Abigail and Charles hosted an anniversary party and surprisingly invited me. I hoped it meant they were trying to make amends. But the evening turned into yet another humiliation. The guests, about 30 of them, followed Abigail and Charles's lead by ignoring me completely. Every attempt I made to join conversations was dismissed. People either looked me up and down before walking away, or spoke only to Mark as if I hadn't said a word. By the end of the night I was humiliated. And when Abigail and Charles gave a toast, their words cut even deeper. "We are so blessed to have everyone important in our lives here tonight," followed by pointed laughter. It was clear I wasn't included in that sentiment. I couldn't take it anymore. Quietly I ordered an Uber and left, crying the whole way home. When Mark got back later that night he was livid. "Why did you walk out like that? Do you know how embarrassing that was for me?" he demanded. "What are you talking about?" I asked, stunned. "I was humiliated all night. Your parents mocked me in their toast. How can you expect me to just sit there and take that?" "I'm not saying it was right," he replied, frustrated. "But you could have dealt with it for one night. It was my parents' anniversary, for God's sake." "You have no idea what it feels like to be treated that way," I said, my voice breaking. "My parents expect an apology from you," he said coldly. "An apology? From me?" I asked in disbelief. "I want one from them first. They humiliated me." Mark's voice hardened. "Maybe my parents were right about you. You're impossible." With that he stormed off to the guest bedroom. I couldn't understand his sudden change. He had always stood up for me before. Couldn't he see that leaving the party was the clearest sign of how deeply his parents had hurt me? The tension between us grew worse. Mark didn't speak to me for a week while his parents sent me barrage after barrage of texts, calling me ungrateful and an embarrassment. Finally, I swallowed my pride and decided to apologize, even though every part of me knew I shouldn't have. Humiliation, strength, and freedom. I loved Mark and I didn't want our relationship to fall apart over his parents' cruelty. But things only got worse when they began hosting weekly family dinners. Mark insisted on attending and I went with him the first time. As soon as we arrived, the tension was palpable. Charles and Mark's siblings glanced at me awkwardly but said nothing, while Mark left me standing alone so he could catch up with his family. Then Abigail appeared, her expression stormy. When she saw me, she marched over and demanded, "What are you doing here?" "Excuse me?" I asked, taken aback. "You heard me. What are you doing in my house right now?" "Well, you invited us for dinner," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Wrong. I invited Mark. This is a family dinner. As Mark's wife, I'm part of this family. Am I not?" "Absolutely not," Abigail snapped. "An orphan like you deserves no place in this family. Did you think you could hide that detail from us? We do background checks on our children's spouses, and you are nowhere near my son's league. I will never accept you here." "Why not? Is that the only thing that determines whether I belong in your family?" I asked, keeping my voice steady despite the lump in my throat. "You're judging me for my background, things beyond my control. Does it not matter that I love your son and make him happy?" He sneered. "Happiness? If that made people rich, the world would be full of billionaires. You're ugly, poor, and you'll never fit into our elite circles." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Why are you being so superficial? Are you afraid I'll damage your reputation? You never even gave me a chance to prove who I am." "Sarah, that's enough," Abigail spat dismissively. Shoving money into my hands, she hissed, "Take this and get yourself a new life. Leave. Now." I turned to Mark for support, but he simply stood there, silent. His lack of defense stung more than his mother's words. With tears burning in my eyes, I grabbed the cash and left. The Uber ride home was a blur of heartbreak. Mark's silence that night lingered. Days passed, then weeks, and still he refused to talk to me. He acted as though I was the one at fault for standing up for myself, even as his parents continued using my past as a weapon. For the first time in our marriage, I felt utterly alone. The weekly family dinners carried on without me. At first it hurt, but soon I began to welcome the solitude. One night, desperate for comfort, I called my parents. "Hey, sweetheart," my dad said warmly. "How's everything going?" "It's not great," I admitted, my voice trembling. "What's wrong, honey?" my mom asked, concern filling her tone. "If you need help, you know we're always here for you." I hesitated before confessing. Mark's family is difficult. They're wealthy and snobby, and they've made it their mission to humiliate me. His mother even called me an orphan to my face. My mom gasped. She said, "What? How dare she insult you like that?" "Do they not know about us?" my dad asked, his voice tight with anger. No. I never told them. I didn't want them to like me for my background. I wanted to be judged for who I am. Sweetheart, my mom said gently but firmly, are you sure this is the man you want to be with? I love him, I whispered, but I can't live like this. Don't worry, Dad said, his voice laced with determination. We'll handle this. Your mom and I are coming to visit next week and we'll set things straight. Their words felt like a lifeline. For the first time in weeks I felt hopeful. When my parents arrived, they treated me to a spa day, insisting I deserved it. While I was being pampered, they set their plan into motion. The next evening, they showed up unannounced at the family dinner Mark's parents were hosting at a posh restaurant. According to Dad, the atmosphere shifted the moment they walked in. Abigail and Charles recognized him instantly, their smug expressions faltering. Mr. Larry? Charles stammered. What brings you here? Dad smiled coolly. Oh, I just happened to see some familiar faces and thought I'd say hello. Familiar faces? Abigail asked, confused. Yes, my daughter-in-law's. Where's Sarah? Your daughter, he pressed. Abigail stammered, the color draining from her face. Yes, Sarah's my daughter. My wife and I adopted her years ago, Dad said firmly. I understand she's been having some issues with you. Abigail tried to defend herself. She hid this from us. If we'd known. She didn't want special treatment because of her background, Dad cut her off sharply. But now I see why she felt the need to shield herself from people like you. He then turned to Mark, handing him a folder. These are divorce papers. My daughter deserves better than this. With that, my parents left. Later, I learned that Dad's business associates began withdrawing their support from Charles's company. It wasn't long before their empire started to crumble. Mark signed the divorce papers without a fight. His family's cruel messages flooded my phone, but I felt nothing, only relief. My parents took me on a long vacation afterward, giving me time to heal and rediscover myself. Losing Mark was painful, but I learned an important lesson. I deserve love and respect, and I will never settle for less. I'm forever grateful to my parents for showing me my worth and helping me reclaim my life.